there is a lot to talk about. Another thing in the Congress, this could be pretty quick. They released a police violence, whatever you want to call it, reform bill. And they've named it after George Floyd. When I say they, I mean the Democrats, of course. They're in control in the House. So listen to this. The House approves police reform bill named after George Floyd. Here's the Democrats there. The George Floyd Justice and Policing Act is on her podium there. House lawmakers on Wednesday passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, a reform bill that would ban chokeholds and alter so-called qualified immunity for law enforcement, which would make it easier to pursue claims of police misconduct. The 220 to 212 vote, mostly along party lines, came 9 months after Floyd, a 46-year-old black man, was killed by Minneapolis police officers last spring. Murdered in cold blood, I would say, by Derek Chauvin. The wide-ranging legislation would also ban no-knock warrants in certain cases. That's huge. That's what killed Breonna Taylor, was a no-knock warrant. Mandate data collection on police encounters, prohibit racial and religious profiling, and redirect funding to community-based policing programs. On the last video, Travis just asked, whoa, wait, are you suggesting some kind of trickled-up economy? Yes, absolutely. Take money from the wealth and wait. No, I guess it is trickle up, but I mean, we really should be appropriating the wealth of the wealthy and giving it to the poor. That's what you're supposed to do. That's basic Keynesian economics, and it just so happens to work. So let's see. This here is really interesting. Representative Karen Bass, she's a Californian representative. Never again should an unarmed individual be murdered or brutalized by someone who is supposed to serve and protect them, she said. Never again should the world be subject to witnessing what we saw happen to George Floyd in the streets of Minnesota. So a lot of people, there's been a lot of debate about how much that Black Lives Matter had an effect on the Democratic Party and in the 2020 election. If you're going to listen to Republicans, they're going to say every Democrat was telling Black Lives Matter to burn down the entire United States and Antifa terrorists are coming for your grandma and all that crazy stuff, right? They will believe anything. But for the most part, most Democrats were very much trying to, Joe Biden says, all the looting needs to stop and they will be prosecuted. And, we don't do that, aged, decrepit white guys like Joe Biden and Bill Clinton even lecturing Black America on how it should fight systemic racism, whitewashing over the civil rights period and saying, oh, we needed more MLK and less Huey Newton and all this shit, right? So now that the dust is cleared on the election, and I have a lot I think about how the BLM resurgence last year might have affected the election. It could have spurred turnout for the Republican Party. It could have been part of why Trump had, such a high turnout, a historic turnout for a sitting president, of course. But it might be now that more Americans recognize police violence as a serious problem, a systemic issue, and an ongoing problem that enough people have woken up to. It has taken literally dozens and dozens of, cell phone camera footage of Black Americans being murdered in cold blood, unarmed, choked, shot, stood on and kneeled on, all the different ways that we've seen this, to kind of wake up to this reality. And as we saw, the turnout against Donald Trump, who was very clear in how he felt about BLM, is there. But now we're seeing the Democrats actually do something on a legislative level that's more than just kind of pandering and message sending. So here we see, let's see. So keep in mind that anything that the Democrats at the House passed under Republican Senate majority with Mitch McConnell was dead on arrival. So it was what was called a messaging bill. But what we see here last year, the House passed a similar version of the bill, but it failed in the Republican-controlled Senate. This time around, Senate Democrats would have to sway at least 10 Republican members for the bill to pass. So in a way, you could still say this is a messaging bill. This is why the Democrats need to push for filibuster reform, and they need to abolish the filibuster. Of course, Republicans say the legislation goes too far to prevent police from doing their jobs effectively. Republican Representative Carlos Jimenez of Florida said on the House floor Wednesday that the bill would weaken and possibly destroy our community's police forces. That's nonsense. It would bring accountability. Part of why police feel totally comfortable in murdering people in the street is because they get to act with impunity. They know it. They know it. I mean, they make it clear. Earlier this week, the Biden administration released a statement urging the House to vote in favor of the proposal. To make our community safe, we must begin by rebuilding trust between law enforcement and the people they are entrusted to serve and protect. We cannot rebuild that trust if we do not hold police officers accountable for abuses of power and tackle systemic misconduct and systemic racism in police departments. So, Biden says, I hope I'll be able to sign this law, but we all know not without abolishing the filibuster. It ain't going to happen. We can't even get Republicans to vote for stimulus money for struggling Americans because they really just don't care. But what makes you think they're going to, support anything like that? Here's a clip of Jamal Bowman on MSNBC. Jamal Bowman is one of the more recent members of the squad. He is from New York. He unseated a longtime political machine Democrat. What was the guy's? Elliot Engel. I think I have that right. I could totally have that wrong. But check this out. This is what he had to say about the bill.
Tonight, the House passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, a police reform bill that bans chokeholds and alters qualified immunity for police officers. But it faces a tough road ahead in the Senate. Joining me now is New York Democratic Congressman Jamal Bowman. Congressman, thank you so much for your time. This bill, as you know, sir, would need at least 10 Republican votes to pass in the Senate. Do you think Democrats can find these 10 votes?
We have to. We have to do everything in our power to find the votes, and we're going to need the Joe Biden White House to help us to do so. President Biden worked in the Senate for a very, very long time. He has a lot of relationships over there, and I'm hoping that deals can be made where we can get 10 Republicans to support this very important bill. Listen, we've needed police reform for a very long time. I remember being a young kid and watching Rodney King be beaten mercilessly by police out in California, and those police officers got acquitted. And what we've seen throughout our nation's history is when police violate the civil rights of an individual or when they kill someone, they often are not held accountable. It's obviously unacceptable. It's been going on for far too long, and that's why I'm excited to be a part of supporting this bill in the House. And let's hope the Senate does its job.
So the activists and some are concerned that the bill doesn't go far enough. Do you believe the bill goes far enough, or do you want to see more reforms?
Well, we often say this is the floor and not the ceiling, so it needs to go further. We need to rethink and reimagine public safety in our entire country. In communities where our schools are underfunded, where healthcare is lacking, and where we need jobs, instead of bringing those resources into our communities, we brought in more police to occupy us. And that's the problem. We think that every problem can be solved punitively. And when you look at places like New York City, my city, and you see police in military gear and, having the resources to buy robot police dogs, you realize.
Wow, that's an incredible point. Yeah, the NYPD has like DARPA dogs and all kinds of. The NYPD has like billions of dollars budget, which is pretty insane when you think about it. But I just want you guys to take notice. You would not have heard rhetoric like that from a sitting member of the United States Congress 4 years ago, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, definitely not 20 years ago or 30 years ago. Somebody's saying we need to reimagine policing, that police are occupying American cities, the way that they behave, the way that they operate, the way the system works. So that's why, if I make my politics clear, I was a Bernie supporter, am still. I wanted him for president. That's why I'm heartened by the squad, and I think we need to help grow their power, and not diminish it. And like he said, the guy said, "Do you think it doesn't go far enough?" Because the activists, activists are already across a wide, have ranging beliefs about the police, from full-on abolition to defunding, and demilitarization. So for him to say that we're creating the floor, it's kind of like what we're talking about earlier with the minimum wage. You create a floor, and from there, you've now changed the conversation. We've now changed the conversation. The on the street activism of last year, I was really proud to do live coverage of a bunch of that. You can look back in my channel at live coverage I did of the Black Lives Matter rallies here in Santa Maria, California, which were historic. I've never seen them that size here in the city. The work of that is now we're having this conversation in the halls of Congress, conversations we didn't think we'd be having, frankly, in that institution, right? And again, we might not even get the bill anywhere near a yes vote. But if we can pressure the Democrats to abolish the filibuster, pressure Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin and the rest, then I think make it clear that we can find primary opponents and start funding them immediately for their next campaigns and start building them up. They'll get scared. Already Chuck Schumer has tacked left and tried to act a lot tougher than he has in the past, just because he knows he's facing a possible primary challenger. So